Now cut a piece of scrim off the roll, slightly longer than your page length. The next task is clamping your sewn sections, which we'll now refer to as contents. We have a clamp designed specifically for the task, but you could use a piece of wood with a heavy weight on or something similar. Make sure you butt it up against the side and butt the spine up against the raised front. Press down and twist the knobs in opposite directions to lock it tight. Open the front to expose the spine and glue the length of the spine, making sure that the PVA fills all the gaps in between the sections. Press your piece of scrim over the top of the glued spine and then glue the whole length again on top of the scrim. And then when you've gone the full length, just run your finger along it, pressing it all down. It should now look something like this. When it's dry, take it out of the clamp and trim the excess scrim off. Trim the sides at a 45-degree angle as shown and do the same to the other end. You now need to attach end papers. Thicker paper works well as it doesn't cockle as much when it's covered in glue. Place a piece of paper on top of your end paper about 1 centimetre from the spine to protect the page, and then glue along the full length using brush strokes towards the spine only. This is to make sure that you don't glue the protective sheet to the paper by getting glue in between the two. Now stick the end paper to the contents, making sure the spine of your end paper lines up with the spine of your contents. Press it down and then repeat on the other side. You must receive instruction from a member of staff before using the guillotine. You're now going to trim the end off. If you've got crop marks, measure from one end to the crop mark at the other end, and then type this measurement into the keypad at the right hand side on the guillotine. When you've done that, press the green start button. Put your contents in, push them to the back left hand side. Put a stack of offcuts on top of your contents to protect the spine from the clamp on the guillotine. Lower the safety lid and press the outermost button simultaneously using both hands and keep them pressed until the blade comes to a stop. The result is a clean cut edge like this. Now simply repeat this process on the other end and the front edge. To get the correct size for your cover, measure the contents and add 5mm to the top, 3mm to the front and 5mm to the bottom edge. Take a sheet of grey board, get a scalpel and a safety rule and use the point of the scalpel to mark your measurements. This is more accurate than using a pencil. Make sure you use the safety edge of your ruler for cutting. Line it up to your scalpel marks and cut using gentle strokes with a scalpel. A sharp blade will cut through in 5 or 6 strokes. Once you've cut your front and back covers, place them either side of your contents a little off the spine. Measure the total width including both covers and then cut your spine to this width. You should now have a front, a back and a spine for your book. Take a piece of buckram that's bigger than your combined grey board area. It should be about 5 to 10 centimetres bigger all round. Using the fat glue brush, cover an area that's bigger than one cover with PVA, working from the middle outwards. Check that you've glued a big enough area, and when you're happy that it's big enough, press the cover down firmly. Next, you need to glue the spine down. Make sure you leave a gap of about 7mm between the spine and your first cover. And when you've glued that down, you then glue the other cover the same way as you did the first, again leaving a 7mm gap from the spine. Now, turn the whole thing over and use a bone folder to smooth it down and expel any excess glue. It also makes sure that it's firmly stuck down. Now trim the buckram to leave about 3 to 5 centimetres all the way around using a scalpel and safety rule. Next, cut the corners off, leaving an excess of slightly more than the thickness of the grey board. Now make 2 slits in the buckram in the gap between the covers and the spine. The slit should start about 5mm outside the point where the cover is stuck to the buckram, and then repeat on the other end. Using the fat glue brush, glue one end, making sure the buckram is completely covered in glue. Now move it to the edge of the table and using your thumb and index finger, press up from below where the grey board ends, gently teasing the buckram up and over, making sure there are no air bubbles. Use the bone folder to expel any excess glue and firmly press the buckram down and inwards but towards the ends. Where the slits go into the recess between the covers and the spine, press firmly down with your finger and then use the bone folder to press it right in. On the corners, press or nick the buckram round the end of the grey board. It should look something like this. Now repeat this process on the other end. On the short ends, the gluing is the same, but the corners just fold over, and you're left with what's known as a hospital bed corner, nice and neat. Turn the whole thing over and use the bone folder to define the creases. The optional headband mentioned at the beginning looks like this. Glue the headband to the spine of the book with the good side facing inwards and then repeat on the other end. Once your end papers are dry, you're ready to stick the contents to the cover. Place a piece of paper inside your end paper and starting from the middle of the page, glue the scrim down and then continue to glue the whole page until it's completely covered in glue, working from the middle towards the edges. Remove the sheet of paper and line the contents up so the gaps at the top and bottom are equidistant. Then raise the spine until it's vertical, using your other hand to hold the contents firmly in place. Lower the cover so it lines up with the back cover and then turn the whole thing over. If you're happy with its positioning, press it down and then repeat with the other cover. Place your book between 2 pieces of grey board, making sure that the spine is protruding. Place this in the book press and wind the top plate down. When you feel resistance, give it a final turn and this will expel any remaining excess glue. The 2 pieces of card are there to protect the spine from being crushed. Finally, use the bone folder to redefine the creases and then use it to make sure any excess glue hasn't stuck the end papers together. And there you have it. You've made yourself a book.